Welcome back, Truth Seeker. Tuesday, July 30th, 2019. Today was day one of the second round of the Democratic debates. Again, they're having 20 candidates debate over the course of 2 days, of course, for the 2020 election. Like we talked about last month, the first debate was a span of 71 weeks from Election Day, November 3rd, 2020, and it was on a date with 71 numerology, and not by accident. 71's the 20th prime number, and everything done by this federal government is by this Kabbalistic code of Gematria, letters, numbers, and dates in the calendar year, because the United States federal government is controlled by secret societies, and this is something the average American has no clue about, even though they should, especially in the information age, especially in light of the many people out here on the web putting out the truth day after day. And I want to send a shout out to Miss Mildred, great woman. She's been very generous to me. She sent me money, she sent me canned vegetables, and she said it would mean a lot if tonight I did a live stream during the debate commenting, and I just saw her message a little bit ago, and I thought, wow, I would really like to have done that for Miss Mildred. But unfortunately, what I was doing during the debates was cleaning up my property because somebody vandalized my house today. And I have little doubt that whoever vandalized the house is some critic of my work, maybe even some federal government employee. So anyhow, now that the house is cleaned up, I would like to, again, discuss the presidential election. And rather than commenting on what the stooges on the stage had to say this evening, again, talk about what needs to happen. And I did something similar a month ago. I talked about a 9-point plan. And since then, I've added on a few more points and elaborated on some of the points I made. And because probably a lot of people didn't see what I said a month ago, it's okay to be a little bit redundant. So, before I begin, please understand that I'm not someone who even believes in the concept of government. I understand what government means. The words break down to mind control. And that's absolutely what government is. Government is constantly trying to mind control the populace, to make them think that they are dependent on Big Brother, that they need Big Brother to keep them safe, to keep the world in order, that we couldn't exist without government. When the truth is the exact opposite. We don't need government. This land where we live in the United States of America, once upon a time, there were a sovereign people who lived here in harmony with the land, in harmony with each other, and they lived here for thousands of years, and they didn't destroy the environment. They didn't invade other nations. They didn't needlessly bring death and destruction into the world. And you could say that those tribal people did have a form of government or a form of a code that they live by, but not in the sense that the federal government preaches and brings about and instills in our mind. Something a lot different, something more along the lines of natural law. So anyhow, being realistic, recognizing that we live in a time where there is a whole lot of government, what could a person do who really wanted to be president, who wasn't part of this rigged system? What could they really do to bring about positive change in the world? What can actually be done? Imagine that you or someone you know or myself became president. What could we actually do within the system that exists to bring about positive change? And what I said a month ago hasn't changed. The first thing that I believe needs to be done, that I think needs to be done, I don't like to use that word believe, the word with the lie in the middle. What I think needs to be done, the first thing is food. Food needs a major focus. I truly do think that food and diet is central to so many of the problems that we see in this world. And as most of us know as Americans, when you walk around this nation, you see a lot of obese people, you see a lot of very unhealthy looking people. And the saddest thing is in the last 2 decades, you see these symptoms becoming an epidemic in children. I live in a community where I rarely see a child that isn't overweight. When I was growing up, I went to an elementary school that probably had about 500 students, a high school that had nearly 2,000. There were some obese children, but it was not the norm. Now it is the norm. It's hard to see a child that isn't overweight. The community I live in right now is probably worse than typical. And, I don't have anything against Hispanic people, but the community I live in right now is largely Hispanic, a lot of agricultural people. And I recognize that their diet is, a very high fatty diet, the cheese, the meat, the refried beans. And it's not too much different than the average American diet. But when I just look around, when I go outside, when I go to the mall, the town, and I see parents with their children, I mean, they truly are almost all overweight. And I just think, this is so sad. I mean, what are these children going to look like when they grow up? They're already overweight, almost all of them. And it's not by accident. You look at where the bad food habits start in this nation, they start with the advertisements and the targeting of children. I'm sure most of you grew up and went to schools where in the schools there were vending machines and soda machines. Probably went to middle schools where at lunchtime there were different fast food counters set up, all sorts of junk food. And any of us who go to the grocery store, we see how it is. We see grocery aisles lined with processed food. We go to checkout stands where it's candy bars and cakes and, everything else that's not good for us. And you have to ask yourself, how can it be that there's so much unhealthy food everywhere you look? And you know how it is? It's because of government. Government is truly subsidizing and paying mega corporations to put out processed and unhealthy food and food that is known to destroy health purposefully. 2 foods that are not good or positive for nutrition are sugar and corn. Yet those are the 2 things most heavily subsidized by our government. It's insanity. This is the same government that throughout the 80s and 90s ran nonstop ads about don't do drugs. Drugs are bad for your health. What so many people never understood is the real reason that the government didn't want you to use drugs is because those substances have the ability to break the mind control they want over the populace. They don't care about your health. No, they want you sick and diseased and ill and intoxicated. They don't care one bit about your health. They want to poison you. Drugs have never been illegal because they're harmful to you. They're illegal because they have the ability to break the mind control, what government is all about, period. There's no way a government who cared about your health would ever subsidize, above all things, 2 foods that bring almost no nutritional benefit. And of course, all the corn, which isn't good for you just in its natural state, is of course used to create alternative forms of sugar. Sugar is the real drug, the real epidemic. Sugar is so addictive. Have you ever seen children in the grocery store reaching out for the candy and mom or dad says no, and just how they instantly go into that fit of rage, that crying? That's not just children being children. That is an addict's reaction to being turned away from the substance that they really want. And that's why so many children grow up to have so many health problems, and are in so denial of what's true about nutrition. My friend Token Tim, he talks about this 22-year-old young person he works with. He says they're a great person, but They're literally about 5'5" tall and nearly 400 pounds. And he says what they do all throughout their shift is drink soda after energy drink, after candy bar, after bag of Skittles, just nonstop sugar input. And my friend Token Tim's always saying, man, you got to get that under control. That's going to give you a lot of problems down the road. Sugar's terrible for you. And the friends always say, no, there's nothing wrong with sugar. Sugar's okay. The body processes it quick. And this guy's 5'5" and nearly 400 pounds. But he's no exception. So many people are in denial about so many things, especially nutrition and diet. And the sad thing is, our government, which promotes this false food pyramid, which is entirely paid for by the corporate food processors of the world, our government has done the research and knows a lot about what positive nutrition is for humanity. But it's all been buried under the food pyramid. The truth is under the food pyramid. The truth is a diet that is rich in plants, meaning vegetables and fruits, keeps a person healthy, fights illness, fights disease. Somehow we all learn from a young age the phrase, you are what you eat. We hear phrases like make food your medicine. But along the way, we don't actually learn what foods we should be making our medicine. We hear the phrases, but then we get all the wrong information. You know, growing up in the 80s and 90s, you saw nonstop advertisements for milk and beef. Milk, it does a body good. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Protein, protein, protein. And, you know, there's young people who are active, who exercise a lot. If you eat a diet rich in protein and milk and you know, animal fats, animal flesh, and you're active and you exercise, you can have a great physique. It's absolutely true. You know, I know a ton of people that have and do. But the exterior appearance isn't all there is to health either. When you eat a diet that's high in protein and animal fats, it clogs your arteries slowly. It's how you hear about the young athlete who has a stroke or has an heart attack in his late 30s, in his early 40s. He looks great, but he has this major health crisis. You know, it's just like having, you know, a really nice automobile, and that automobile runs great, but maybe you don't keep up the oil changes. Maybe you use, you know, lesser fuel products, you know, use cheaper oil. That car looks great on the outside until the day that the poor maintenance, you know, causes the whole car to die prematurely. It's no different, you know. So many people get angry when I say, Zach, you're preaching, you know, this veganism. I'm not saying you have to be vegan. I'm saying you should make plants a major component of your diet. If you want to eat meat, if you're, you know, if you just love meat too much and you love cheese and all this, you know, you can have some of that in moderation. I truly think it's better to filter all of that out of your diet all the way. But the point I'm saying is the more plants and fruits in your diet, and it doesn't have to be your entire diet, but the more, the healthier you're going to be. And, you know, there's a lot of information on nutrition. Depending on your blood type also determines, you know, the ratio of, you know, protein to, say, vegetables. And there's protein in vegetables and fruits too. There's trace amounts, but enough. But if you research diet, even your blood type is relevant. So what we need to do as a nation is address the health epidemic. We need to stop all the mass marketing of toxic foods to children that gets them hooked as addicts at a young age. You know, this is your body on soda should be a commercial, and it should show a bloated human being, way overweight. This is your body on soda trying to cut soda. Have you ever known anybody who's addicted to soda who tries to stop having soda? They have massive headaches. They have migraines. They're in severe pain, like an addict. Sugar is a real poison. It's a real toxin. And our government knows about it. And they subsidize it because they want you poisoned. And why do they want that? Again, because this nation is run by corporations who care more about profit than people. And they know sick, diseased people are very profitable in the Ponzi scheme of a society they've built. They know that if you get sick, next thing you got to do is go to the doctor and pay a fortune to get their treatments, which treat symptoms rather than cure problems. Everything is designed for profit. It's all about profit over people in this world. And the other thing is, why does it cost so much to go see the doctor? Well, of course, there's multiple reasons for that. And I'm going to address part of that problem a little bit in just a moment when we get to education and what we could do to alleviate the cost of quality healthcare. It's actually a really simple solution. Most of the solutions that we need as a society are simple. Eating better, not poisoning ourselves. Huge solution. As a society where most of our tax dollars go to that are then respent by the government, where they go to is, military overkill, an education system which doesn't educate us. I live up here in the Pacific Northwest where a lot of the technology jobs are. High-paying jobs that you can get if you have the skills and knowledge. You don't even need a college education. Jobs that pay $100,000 out of the gate, some of them up to $300,000 out of the gate. Amazon, Google, Apple, all of these big tech companies paying young people huge wages. But do you know what's interesting about these young people? Overwhelmingly, they're not American. Overwhelmingly, they're from the Asian nations that specialize in mathematics and science and don't invest all that much per person into their education system. If you look at how much the U.S. spends per student versus how much India or these other nations spend per student, it's an astronomical difference. Yet the reality is there's a much greater return from these Indian students, from these Chinese students, from these Russian students. You go and look at the technology companies, this is who works there, not Americans. The best jobs in this nation are going to people who are educated in other nations that don't spend a fraction of what we do on education. We're going to get to why that is too. But we're still talking about the food component. We spend so much as a nation on military, education, and healthcare. And almost all of this expenditure on healthcare could be wiped out if we had a populace that ate right. And why wouldn't you want to eat right? See, we need to educate people from a young age to realize that the mouth, it's the entrance point for nutrients. We shouldn't treat our mouth like it's this territory that's meant to just be about indulging good flavors. Because that's how we think, so many of us. We want to eat what tastes good. And understand this, eating healthy doesn't mean that the food has to be tasting bad. I love the food I eat. I'm happy every time I eat a meal. But my meals aren't, overloaded with sugar. I don't need dessert. I don't need super rich, fatty foods. You can train your mouth to enjoy things that are good, that are natural, that are organic, that are healthy. But so many of us, when we eat, what we think about is what tastes good over everything else. Now, what's actually good for me? What's going to keep me, having a high energy rate? A lot of you guys say, Zach, how do you do so much work? And, don't you sleep? I mean, I'd like to sleep more, honestly. That's probably my biggest problem is I should sleep more, but there's a lot to do and there's not enough hours in the day. But the reason I'm able to sustain myself and work so hard, I mean, those of you who've been around since 2013 have seen that I work nonstop. I don't take a day off. I work pretty much every single day. And I've been this way my whole life. And the reason I'm even able to is because I'm well nutritioned. I take care of myself. People who eat poorly, they don't have energy. They're fatigued. They don't feel well. They just have they don't have motivation. They're going to go lay down on the couch and turn on the boob tube and get programmed some more. They're going to wake up in the morning exhausted. They're going to go spend a bunch of money on coffee, buy some sugary energy drinks, kill themselves some more. I don't even drink coffee. You guys know that? I don't drink coffee. I don't need any caffeine. I don't use caffeine. I just go, 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 because I have good nutrients in my body. Anyone can do what I do. That's the other thing too. I'm not a miracle worker. I'm living intelligently. I'm making good choices. I got educated as a young person about nutrition. So food, we got to change the whole thing. We got to stop subsidizing foods that are toxic. Why should there be any subsidies for corn and sugar? We don't need this. Ethanol, we don't need this. We're a big chunk of the way into the 21st century. We have so many energy alternatives to the fuels we use. It's another topic we're going to get to. If we're going to subsidize food as a government, if we need to do this, let's subsidize foods that help people. Let's subsidize organic produce. The reason so many people can't afford organic produce is because there's no subsidies behind it. There's subsidies for sugar, for corn, for, meat. It's why you can go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac and it's cheaper than, an organic tomato. So of course the person's going to go buy the Big Mac. You can eat a Big Mac and you can feel full for the evening. If you eat one tomato, you're probably not going to be that full. And realize that, this is insanity. A Big Mac should not be cheaper than an organic tomato. There's a lot of resources that go into making a hamburger patty. That cow has to consume so many resources. If you drive through the country and you see cows that are lucky enough to, roam out in a grass field, which isn't how most beef's being cultivated, but if you just go and look, there's a massive pasture, massive acres, and there might be 40 cows roaming around. And those 40 cows are going to become food. But look at how massive that area is. Imagine if that area was growing, potatoes and spinach and, whatever other foods you want to envision. You could grow so many different foods out in that field. So many. Or you can just have 40 cows. And I guarantee if you turn that food or that lot all into vegetable fruit production, you're going to actually cultivate a lot more food that's going to feed a lot more people than those 40 cows. Okay? Think about it. So you could subsidize that field instead of organic produce, and then it could be to the grocery store, and it could cost, if you go to your typical grocery store, I live on the West Coast, so maybe things are a little bit different in other areas. Things are tend to be more expensive out here on the West Coast. But you go and you look at the organic tomatoes, they're going to be at least $3 a pound, at least. You go to some stores, it might be even more. That's a lot, $3 a pound. You fill up a bag with tomatoes, you probably got, 3.5 pounds in there. You're spending over $10. Person who doesn't have a budget, they're going to the frozen aisle section. They realize they can get like a big thing of hamburger patties and, some chicken strips. That's going to cost them $10. They realize that's going to feed them and their family a whole lot better than that bag of tomatoes. A bag of tomatoes is going to be gone in no time. So our government is choosing what foods to subsidize. They want to drive people to those foods because they know those foods are going to get people sick. And then on the flip side, those people are going to, be profitable because they're going to be the ones out spending the money at the pharmacy. And think of the grocery store model. These mega grocery store chains, if you research, they're actually not making that much profit off the food in their store, but they're making mega profits off the pharmaceuticals they're selling in the back. That's an observation I had as a child. I thought, when I was about 10 years old, I just started to notice how all of a sudden, so when I was 10 years old, just for historical perspective, that was the early 90s, I started to notice around that time that just pharmacies were appearing everywhere. And I just thought, do this many people need drugs? I'm riding my bike around. I just rode my bike around town. I can't even count how many pharmacies I just passed. But all of a sudden, they were just popping up everywhere. And that trend's never ended. And what pushes us all in the direction of needing these pharmaceuticals? And you look at America, almost everybody's on the same drugs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure. This is all from the food we eat. It's the food. The food, period. Now, I want to elaborate on what I said about education last time. A big problem with our society is we don't have good values. We are selfish. We don't care about other people. Period. Overwhelmingly. Somebody out there is going, I care about my family. That you care about your family. That's pretty much you. You know, you don't care about people outside of your family. And you just can't have a healthy society that way. You know. So, how do you solve this problem? Well, again, it all starts at a young age. In our education system, which should remind all of us that we're not free. If we lived in a free society, we wouldn't have to go to school. It'd be an option. We are required to go to the state-run education system. And private schools aren't any different. They're following the same state-run curriculum. You know, private schools are for parents that have extra money, that want smaller class sizes. But fundamentally, they're still following the exact same curriculum that's put out by the state. What we need is a completely new system and a completely new curriculum. And at the youngest of ages, it needs to be focused on human values. And we talked about this a month ago. Children at a young age should learn ethics, you know, why it's good to be respectful to other people, you know, why it's good to abide by the golden rule. You know, treat other people the way you want to be treated. That's probably the single most important lesson anybody can learn and understand and realize and practice out of all the lessons there are to teach in the world. You know, if everybody lived by the golden rule, there probably wouldn't be too many problems in this world. And of course, Big Brother doesn't want that. Big Brother wants a world with problems. Big Brother wants a world with problems so they can take that problem, and whether it's a molehill or not, they're going to turn it into a mountain so that you're so in fear that you're willing to just cough it all up and get down on your knees for Big Brother to keep you safe and, you know, solve all the threats out there. But what we really need in a sensible world is people with good values who respect each other, who respect other people's things. You know, think about you for people who are generous and lend things. When you lend something to somebody, first of all, you're lucky to get it back. And second of all, you're probably expecting that when you do get it back, it's not going to be nearly as nice as when you gave it away. It's going to be all bent up, scratched up, maybe broken. Isn't it sad? There's not many people who are generous in this world, but for the people who are out there, they just know. It's just like, why is it this way? You know, anytime somebody loans me something, and normally I don't even want to take anything from anybody, but if somebody loans something to me, it's going to come back exactly in the condition that it was given to me. I'm going to take care of that item better than anything else, and I take care of all of my stuff. You know? Again, it's because we don't have values as a society. We weren't raised right. Most of us were raised in the state school system. So for young people, rather than, you know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, rather than, you know, being bombarded with, you know, language and mathematics and all the subjects that you start to get at a young age, the first few years of the school system should just be constant reinforcement of positive values. How to share, how to cooperate, how to play together, you know, why it's important to take care of ourselves, learning about nutrition, learning all the things that will make people sensible. That's all it should be. You don't need to focus on the other topics before then. In China, they might be laughing at me right now because they're like, yeah, right. Our children are rocket scientists by the time they're in second grade. And there is something to that too. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you know, establish a good set of fundamental values at a young age, you're going to have a much better society. And in the Eastern nations, they do that as well. They figure out a way to make sure people have good values and great educational skills. But the thing is, if by the time, say kindergarten through second grade is about establishing these core values. And then when you get to third grade, that's when you really start, focusing on the fundamentals. Excellent reading and writing skills, excellent penmanship, critical thinking, mastering the mathematical concepts, the basics. Look at the average American. We get so many years of mathematics, and most of us can't do the basics. We can't balance a checkbook. We can't figure out, again, almost everybody I know is the same. If I'm shopping with somebody in the grocery store and there's like, here, to make a case in point, pay attention the next time you go to your big grocery store and look at the potato chip sales and just look at what they do. These companies know that people can't do math. They'll have like their two 20-ounce bags on sale for $5, right? Two 20-ounce bags for $5. And then they'll have their three 12-ounce bags. Hold on, let me turn off the phone real quick. 1 second. All right, caller, I'm not trying to ignore you, but I got to finish this presentation before I get to it. So I'm saying they'll have like their two 20-ounce bags for $5 on sale, and it'll be the same brand. Let's just say it's Ruffles. And then they'll have their three 12-ounce bags, buy three for $8 on sale at the same time. I see this at, Kroger stores. I see this at Safeway. And I think who's going to buy three 12-ounce bags for $8 when you can get two 20-ounce bags over here for $5? And they'll do this. All these stores, if you pay attention. Two 20-ounce bags is 40 ounces of potato chips for $5. 40 ounces for $5, or three 12-ounce bags for $8. That's 36 ounces for $8. So you're getting less and you're paying way more. All the time. And I'm just using the potato chips as an example, but if you go down the aisles of stores, these kind of sales are going on all over that make no sense. And in a way, it's just kind of like a mockery of us because they know we can't do math. We can't add up a simple equation. We can't figure out what the best value is. The people who rule over us, they make fun of us in a lot of ways every single day. Like knocking down 2 towers on 911 and declaring a national emergency. So anyway, first, you get the young people with the great set of values, having understanding of the world, why to treat people right, why to treat your body right, learning about the natural world. And then you master the skills that are important. Think about how many years we spend in school. Way too many, first of all. But if by third grade you're working on mastering the basics of mathematics, and realize your mind's more developed by third grade, so you can pick up on these concepts way faster, you're ready for them. But you work on language, you work on mathematics, you learn the scientific method, you engage in scientific experiments that are fun, This is the way it should be. And think about what happens in our education system. We keep learning the same things year after year. I can't tell you how sick I got of Christopher Columbus by the time I was in middle school. I was like, seriously, we're going to spend another big part of the year learning about Christopher Columbus again? How many times do I need to learn about this Christopher Columbus guy? What should happen is by the time you get to 8th grade, K through 8, the conclusion of 8th grade should be like the conclusion of high school. You're done with the basic learning. You're done. We need to condense how much time we waste of our nation's youth in our ridiculous education system, which doesn't really get anybody forward. So what needs to happen by the time you're in 8th grade, by the time you're done with 8th grade, is you need to be at a point where you've mastered reading and writing, you've mastered the important mathematical concepts. And what are the important mathematical concepts? Addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, how to actually use these skills in the world to balance your checkbook, to make sure you're not getting ripped off at the grocery store, to make sure you're not getting ripped off in the marketplace, to make sure you're not being taken advantage of by banks with interest rates and whatnot. So many people will go out and buy a house without having 20% down for a down payment. So many people do this, and it's idiotic. Never buy a house if you can't put 20% down, because then you have to pay mortgage insurance every month. And mortgage insurance is very expensive. And mortgage insurance goes towards 0% of the principal of the house. So you're just paying another big fat fee to the banks every month, who are already ripping you off. You thought you bought a house for $200,000, but now with your mortgage insurance and everything else they factor in there, your house is, over the term of your mortgage, is probably going to end up costing you over $600,000. This is what I mean with making sure you have mastery of the skills. Not only do you know how to do it, but you know how to use it in the world. You had a teacher who prepared you for why it's important to have these skills. Because you're going to go out in the world someday and somebody's going to try to sell you a house and they're going to rip you off. A bank's going to try to give you a loan, they're going to try to rip you off. Most people don't need all the complicated calculus and stuff. There's very few people who are ever going to use that. And now that gets me to my point. So by the time you're in 8th grade, you know how to read and write. You know how to use important math concepts that come up daily. I don't even know if we need history. Maybe there's some important historical concepts to teach, but there's not many. But the point is, in your K through 8, you got what you really needed. You're a good individual. You have skills that you can use so that you can be successful in society. But now here's what happens. When you go into 9th grade, you're not going in to do more of the same that you just did in 8th grade and 7th grade and 6th grade, because that's the way it is. No. And right now you hear these Democratic candidates talking about, paying for all of college, making it so everyone's debt's forgiven, so that there's no tuition. Instead of doing that, let's turn 9th grade to 12th grade into college. So that by the time you finish 8th grade, you probably know what you're into. You probably know if you really like mathematics. You probably know if you really like language and reading and writing. You probably know if you really like science. You probably know if you're a hands-on person. You probably know if you'd like to be a builder or an engineer. You probably know if you'd like to be a farmer. You probably know if you'd like to be a landscaper. So there should be tiers that are offered. You want to go in the mathematical direction? Here you go. You want to go in the scientific direction? Here you go. You want to be a writer? You want to be a journalist? Et cetera, et cetera. You're into theater. You're an artist. Here you go. There's all these routes you can choose. You've mastered what's important through 8th grade. You know who you are as an individual, which most of us did by the end of 8th grade. And for people who are still trying to fill it out, there can be a path for them too. Maybe you haven't made up your mind. Maybe you still want a taste of the world. Maybe you go to an extra year where you get your feet wet and you figure out which path you want to master in. So then you become a super senior. You end up doing a 13th year of school. It doesn't matter. It's just like the person who goes to their 5th year of college. So just imagine if it was that way. We've already dedicated all these resources to pay for everybody's education K through 12, instead of wasting so much time where, almost everybody comes out of the American high school system knows that, what do you really have to show for yourself? Not much. So instead of wasting all that time, K through 8's where, you get the core, and then 9th through 12th is now the years of college. And I think what you'd have is, a lot more engaged people, because now they're getting to make a choice. They're getting to choose the path they want to be on. And imagine that. Imagine that, pursuing that type of path, by the time you're about 18 years old, when most of us get out of high school, 17 or 18, I was 17 when I graduated. Most people are 18. I was just shy of 18 though. When I graduated June 2001, I turned 18 July 21st, so I wasn't far off. But imagine when you finish high school, now you have a real solid education in something. You could literally go out and work for an engineering firm. You could go out and work for a paper, for a magazine, etc. You have a real set of skills. You're an 18-year-old individual, and you can go out and be successful in the world. You have a real education. You got your whole future ahead of you. This can all be done. Why shouldn't it be done? And for people who want to go further with education, doctors, lawyers, this type of thing, well, now you enter your 3-4 year program. And instead of finishing, law school when you're 30 years old or in your late 20s or medical school when you're 30 years old. Now you can finish in your early 20s. And the other thing is, because you now have the basis of your education, if you're going to be a doctor, you probably have some sort of science background that you would get through in ages 9 through 12. You don't have all this debt and everything for your undergraduate. Now the only extra funding is going to be for medical school. So medical school is going to cost you a lot less. And that's the other thing. We could figure out ways to make these, master's and doctorate and specialized programs. We could figure out a way to make them cost a lot less. They don't need to cost what they do. And because they cost so much, that's also what ends up contributing to the massive expenses of the healthcare system. That's one component. Of course, insurance is another. And insurance needs a major overhaul. I mean, if insurance is really about, avoiding disasters and making sure if something horrible happens in the world that, it's not life-ending for somebody, then it really shouldn't be a for-profit industry. Look at what the CEOs of these insurance companies make, astronomical salaries. A lot of people in the insurance industry make a ton of money. If these industries are supposed to be there to avoid problems, they really shouldn't be about financial reward for people. Insurance is bankrupting people. So there's all sorts of overhauls that need to be done to all sorts of things. But right now, we're just hitting the basics: nutrition, education, how we can fix it. And realize none of these things are complicated. They don't cost extra money either. They save money. They make it so that there's less required expenditures by taxpayers and government. Okay, the next issue, the environment. I'm not talking about global warming or climate change. I'm just talking about the reality that we are destroying the environment. Anybody who's my age or older has seen that obviously something's very wrong with the planet. There's way less insects. There's way less birds. There's way less animals. There's way less fish. What does this clearly show? It shows that the planet is in decline. All of those things are essential for life. The circle of life, like that song from The Lion King. It's in decline. Are we just going to sit here and wait till, the sea is barren? Are we going to wait until the world's like WALL-E, where we sit in a chair in front of a screen and we hit the red button or the blue button for the syrup to come out for our meal for the day? Because that's where we're going. That's where we're going. So I just get so sick of listening to politicians always take it to, climate change and global warming. No, just look at how the actual planet is in decline. Our government knows the planet's in decline. Whatever they're doing in the skies, and that's another thing we need to talk about. We need to talk about openly what's going on in the skies. We need to be told. At the beginning of 2019, the Ivy League schools came out and said that the U.S. government should spend $2 billion a year doing what they called aerosol injections to block out the sun, to decrease sunlight to reach the planet, to stop global warming. Okay, and I covered that story. I believe it was put out in February or January this year. A number of Ivy League schools came together and said it's time to begin spraying the skies with what they called aerosol injections. And obviously, for those of us who are awake, we already realize that they're doing something like that. It's been going on for some time. So this isn't, by them putting out that story, it was kind of like hinting at what's already going on. But if you go back and read those articles, the Ivy League school said something like that would probably be at least 15 years off, as if it hasn't been going on for at least the last 15 years. Again, we live in a nation where during the Vietnam War, the federal government came out and said that they sprayed the skies of Vietnam to increase rainfall to flood out the Vietnamese troops who had tunneling systems and were dependent on their feet. So if they were swamped out, it made it harder for them to, travel. That means for, the better part of the last century, the government's had sophisticated ways of manipulating and influencing weather. And it's obviously going on now. And I'm not sure that everything the government's doing is actually, in the interest of the people or the planet. Again, just like how they subsidize foods that are meant to poison us and kill us. I live in an agricultural town in the middle of Washington, and when it heated up here, and the crops started to grow, one night it got extremely cold. It got extremely cold, much colder than it typically ever does, and a lot of people lost a substantial part of their harvest. And I just thought, is that just because we live in this severe weather time and weather really is out of sync? Because it is. Or could it possibly have something to do with, the spray that's going on overhead? When you realize that your nation is run by corporations and for profit, it just made me wonder, because I honestly don't know what the true makeup is and who owns the majority of the agricultural fields around here. I don't know if, there's some major corporations that have an interest in a lot of the fields around here, or if a lot of it truly is, the end of many local farmers. I do know that there are a lot of local and independent farmers here, but I still don't know what the overall makeup is for the total percentage of fields. And one of the major crops that's growing here, signs of the times, is hops, because of course it's a nation of addicts and alcoholics. But more and more farmers are going towards hops because that's where the money is. And if you look around this year, the hops production, it's only my second year living out here, but just from talking to other people, the plants are behind schedule. They're not as big as they were. And I saw it last year. The hops plants were way bigger last year. And it's true for a lot of different plants. But I just wonder, it's like, what if like these major alcohol producers who have major influence on our nation, look at all the advertising from the major brew companies, what if these hops plants around here aren't their hops plants? And this is essentially looked at as their competition. You know what I'm saying? And they don't want this competition. Is it possible that in the chemical spray brew that the area gets, they put something in there to taint the output? I'm speculating. I'm not saying that I have any evidence for any of this, but if you use your imagination and you just look at the reality of things, is it too hard to believe that this could possibly be going on? So anyway, the environment's in decline. The government's doing crazy things in the skies right in front of our face. And what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it really as a people? Is there any incentive being given to the people to change their behaviors? What's truly causing the decline? Obviously, all of the packaged foods are a major part of the reason that so much sea life's dying is because there's so much garbage in the oceans, which kills so much of the sea life. All of this packaged food that we get, it ends up in landfills, it ends up in the ocean. I'm sure you've all heard about the islands in the ocean of garbage. I'm sure you've seen the images of, the choked out birds and turtles that have, the 6-pack wrappers around their neck and all that. What's the incentive for people to get away from buying packaged food in the stores that ends up in the landfills and the oceans? Is there any? What if there was a major incentive if you were a certain type of shopper? If you went every day with a bag, your own bag, what if there was some major tax credit to shop at a grocery store with your own bag and just shop and get produce that didn't have plastic on it? So, you're coming home and you're filling up your fridge or whatever with things that aren't going to create garbage. You bring a jug to the store and you fill it up with purified water. You bring some Tupperware, you fill it up with your coffee beans or whatever, but you're someone who doesn't contribute to trash. These types of incentives could be created. There's a way to do it, absolutely. What are we doing to incentivize people to not trash the planet? I don't hear anybody talking about anything like this in the world, but these are the types of things that need to be done. And these are the types of things that people who care about the planet already do. Again, energy. Energy, that's another thing. Why do we continue to create our energy by burning coal? By burning natural gas? There are alternatives. You want to put the nation to work? You want to revolutionize the nation? Imagine plants emerging. Or we don't even need to build new plants. Imagine Detroit, which is full of empty warehouses, and all places like Detroit, if all of a sudden those plants were put to work manufacturing solar panels and increasing, the capacity of solar panels, making solar panels greater than what they already are. All of these things can be done. Look at what's happened to the television in the last 10 years. We used to all have televisions that were heavy, clunky, gigantic things, with what we thought were good pictures. But now look, they're lightweight, they're thin, less resources, a million times better picture, and the cost keeps dropping. How's it even possible? All of the if the minds of the world wanted to make, solar panels this much greater, they could. Geothermal, from what I understand, wind energy is actually not too realistic for most residential people, and I think there is some downside to wind. But the point is, there's so many different alternatives that could be pursued. Imagine if you got a major tax credit for putting solar on your house. Again, right now, the federal government is getting rid of the tax credit for putting solar panels. Each year, they're decreasing it, and in 2 years, they're going to get rid of it altogether. How can this be the direction of things right now? At this age, we're getting rid of the incentive to go to renewable energy. This is insanity. Again, when I was in college, the George W. Bush administration offered a $100,000 tax credit to anybody who bought a Hummer. And that was after we went to war in the Middle East, wars that obviously had at least something to do with oil, what is the blood of the modern economic world. $100,000 tax credit to buy a gas guzzler that gets 8 gallons a mile? Insanity. And of course, that was a tax credit that every wealthy person who could use a $100,000 credit went out and did. Go out and buy the $50,000 SUV. You don't even need to drive it. You just got $100,000 back. And of course, the big auto manufacturers, they were behind that. They needed to sell their cars. They needed to sell their gas guzzlers, because this is who runs the world. The oil companies, the mega corporations, the greedy ones, the ones that don't care about the planet. All they care about is their profit and making sure that their shareholders will get their return at the expense of all things decent. So if the government can go out and offer $100,000 for somebody to buy a Hummer, which kills the planet, then surely they can come up with a way for someone to get a tax credit who cares about the future of the planet and wants some solar panels. And right now, the tax credit is, I believe you get 30% or 20-some percent. It's one of the two for whatever your cost is on solar panels. Why? Why do you only get a small fraction back? I think I talked about this a month ago. I actually looked into what it would cost. So last year, my energy bill, and realize I'm pretty good about minimizing energy. Last year, I spent almost exactly $1,000 on my energy bill last year, which is pretty good. It might be different depending on where you live in the world, but I spent a lot less than the average person in my area. Probably, about half as much, if not even more severe. But to get a solar panel system that could produce that much energy for a year, do you know what it costs? To get a system that will give you enough output, and I live in a very sunny area of Washington State, by the way. When people think of Washington, they think of Western Washington, where it's rainy all the time. When you get west of the mountains, the rest of the state's desert, and there's a lot of sun here. It's not much different than Phoenix, Arizona. It's not as hot, but there's just as much sun. But the point is, to get a solar panel system that will give you enough energy to cover $1,000 of energy output for the year, that system costs $25,000. And the system is said to last for 40 years. So if you think about the cost of it over 40 years, it's it's like $400 a year. Well, the cost of energy will increase too. So it would be worth the investment, but that's still pretty expensive. That's not feasible for most people. Most people don't have $25,000 extra dollars to get a solar panel system. And the thing is, the way most people use energy, they're going to need an even more expensive system. And keep in mind, that type of system doesn't even include the batteries in case you want to store energy. But the point is, it's expensive, and it doesn't have to be. If the minds of the world were put towards increasing the capacity of the technology, the abundance of the technology, the cost could be driven down. It could become better than it is. And if the government wanted to, they could also say, you know what? Not only will we give you a tax credit for all of your expenditure, maybe even get a bonus tax credit. And, governments are silly too. If you had a solar system on your house prior to January of this year, 2019, in this community in Washington State, they were paying you, if you generated more energy than you used, whatever went back into the grid, they were paying you 5 times what they charge the consumer. So just say like you paid 1 cent per kilowatt hour, obviously it costs more. They were paying you 5 cents per kilowatt hour that you put back into the system. And, my camera froze. But in January of this year, they ran out of money to pay people for the credit. They ran out of money. And so now they can't do it anymore. And it's like, okay, why were you paying people 5 times as much what you charge? Why not just pay them the same rate? Because then essentially you could pay 5 times as many people, to participate in this system. And then you probably wouldn't run out of money and just have to shut down the system. Our government is just so nonsensical. When you look at a lot of things the government does, you just have to say, who is running this thing? Is it complete morons? And oftentimes the answer is yes. I mean, I knew that for sure when George W. Bush became the president of the United States. We are being led by morons. And why is that happening? That shouldn't be happening. Morons shouldn't be leaders. But to get back on topic here, the environment. It really is dying. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It couldn't be more evident. And how do we make people care? Because realize we've been culturally conditioned to not care as well. And again, that goes back to the bad values. That goes back to the mind control programming. The people who rule over us, the people who've filled our heads with ideas and beliefs and thoughts, they don't want the best for us. They want chaos. They seem to want death, destruction. So all of this needs to be undone. And, when you look at these major cities, especially in the summer when they're just filled with smog, hello, Los Angeles, hello, Houston, you just look and you just go, God, that is gross. Can it be good to live there? Can it be good to breathe air like that? I mean, it's just disgusting. No, it can't. And what's causing all that smog? A lot of it is driving, in our automobiles. Now, most people, because of the way society's been structured, and hello, Los Angeles, if you guys don't know about the history of Los Angeles, the history of Los Angeles is that once upon a time, there were electronic, trains there that didn't make the sky smoggy, and they were building up the city. They wanted this, dense urban population, people close to each other, close to work, close to, the markets. And of course, a lot of cities are this way. But then what happened is General Motors came to town and they said, oh no, we got a whole new vision for the city of angels. And they got rid of the electronic trains. And they said, stop all this close, compact development. How's this going to help our automobile model? We need people who need to travel distance. We need people who need an automobile so that they can get from their suburban home to their workplace. And they truly began planning the city with suburbs spaced out so that people would be relying on the automobile. So they'd be relying on oil and fuel. And what happened in Los Angeles happened in other places. The automotive industry is very powerful. They designed the suburban world. And when you drive to Los Angeles and you see that smoggy, disgusting environment, you can thank General Motors. That was General Motors' grand vision for the people of the world to pad their pockets over doing something sensible. For all the people who preach, all we need is the corporation, all we need is the business, it's not true. If these people just had their way, well, that's what happens. But what you can't have is you can't have the government and the corporation. You can't have the merger. You can't have the fascism, because that's also what you have here. And that's also how it got to be as crazy as it is. What you need is sensible people, and people who realize what's right from wrong, and people who aren't greedy, and people who don't care about profit more than everything else. So that said, infrastructure. We realize the automobile, there's a lot of nice things to having an automobile. I have a hybrid automobile, and I realize that's not a perfect system either. I realize a lot goes into those batteries and whatnot, but the car has zero emissions and, well, excuse me, not zero emissions, but very tiny, emissions footprint, gets over 50 miles a gallon, better than the average vehicle. Anyway, I try to drive as little as possible. When I lived downtown Seattle from 2006 to 2012, before I moved out to the suburbs myself, and even when I moved to the suburbs, I still didn't drive a lot. But in that time, from 2006 to 2012, I didn't even drive 1,000 miles in an automobile. I walked almost everywhere. I rode my bike almost everywhere. And the point is, we need incentives for people to not use their cars as well. I'm going to talk more about that at the end. But again, anything can be incentivized. Imagine if you got a major tax credit, or you didn't have any tax liability if you rode your bicycle to work. Now, for some people, that's impossible. But I know for a lot of people, they could ride their bicycle to work if they were given a reason to. How much do you make a year? 30,000? How much do you pay in taxes? A third of that? Imagine if you could have that third back if you rode your bicycle to work every single day. You'd probably do it then. By the end of the year, instead of having 20,000, you got to keep all 30,000, and you got some exercise. You'd probably do it. Also, with regards to infrastructure, we're one of the only modern nations in the world that doesn't have high-speed trains all over the place. We're like behind the whole world on high-speed trains. How's that? It's because we spend all our money on the military. Spend all our money on policing the world. We spend all our money on, filling the pockets of bankers and, Wall Street types. So anyway, we need to reinvent infrastructure. When I moved to Seattle, Washington, one of the things that I was shocked about is that they didn't have an electronic train like Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon has something called the MAX, which has existed since the 80s and has continually expanded to connect more and more of the metropolitan area. So Portland and its suburbs. And the MAX isn't expensive to ride. And if you live close to the MAX line, you don't need a car. You can get almost anywhere in the greater Portland area, the suburbs, inexpensively. And imagine, again, that, really what government should be doing. Let's just make this point real quick. What is one of the things that people hate most about this world we live in? Traffic? Is that one of the answers? Traffic? It is. So many people hate traffic, and traffic's becoming more and more of an epidemic because there's more and more people and the roads aren't changing. Portland, Oregon, for example, the way it's built, there's nowhere to even expand the freeways. Way more people have moved there. Traffic's a nightmare. Seattle, same thing. Seattle's roads are a lot better than Portland's. It's also got a lot bigger population. But just traffic are nightmares in these cities, and many other cities too. I'm talking about the Pacific Northwest because it's where I live. Seattle doesn't have the electronic train. They're finally just now building it, and it's only going to be limited areas. But they're literally like 40 years behind Portland, which makes no sense. Anyway, there needs to be incentives to get people off the road. There needs to be less cars. Imagine if at the end of the year, you could prove that you didn't have a car. You didn't own a car, no cars, no license to you. And, what you did for the year was you rode the bike. You rode the electronic train. Imagine if the end of the year, the government gave you credit or even paid you for that. Remember, this is a government that comes up with money to pay people $100,000 to buy a Hummer, which is absolute insanity. That means there's money somewhere to incentivize people to make better choices. You know, there's so many people that don't need to drive their car. They have an alternative, but they need a reason to escape the convenience of their car and contributing to the daily traffic jam. So these are ideas that need to be explored. You know, the cars are destroying the environment. The traffic jams are destroying people's days. And, in Seattle, there's people who live in a place called Marysville, which is about 40 miles north of Seattle, and they work in Seattle because that's where the jobs are. And with the traffic every day from Seattle to Marysville, it's about a 2.5-hour commute each way, which means there are people that are literally spending 5 hours a day in traffic. Do the math on that. 5 hours a day, at least 5 days a week, and realize these traffic jams go through the weekend too. Some people are working more than 5 days a week. 25 hours a week in traffic on top of your job. This is becoming the norm for so many people. What there should be is an electronic train that runs back and forth up there. You know what I mean? And there could be. You know. Okay, now with regards to taxes, this nation was founded on people not being taxed on their income. So what's the deal? Well, why are people being taxed on their income if that was one of the main concepts of this nation? How did we get so far from that? And just right away, what needs to be done is, okay, no more income tax. It's gone. Abolished. Nada. No more income tax. Now, if there's no more income tax, obviously the federal government has a lot less money to work with. And to me, that's no problem. To me, government is the problem. But again, people probably overnight aren't going to be ready for the disappearance of their government. They're too conditioned. They are dependent on Big Brother. So there has to be steps. So if there's no income tax and you're going to do things like revolutionize transportation in the city, you're going to build electronic trains, you're going to build high-speed rail, there has to be some sort of cash flow. So what's a fair way to do it? What's a way that's, if people see that their money's going towards something that makes the world better? Let me chime in there with that. I don't like government because I see what government is in this world. And I'm not sure that it's even possible for there to be a just government. But if there was, if I saw a government that didn't overtax its people and that took the community wealth, which comes from taxes, and actually did things that made society a better place, then I might say, okay, I'm all right with this limited government. As long as I don't see it bringing any chaos or wars or killing or death, I just see it making positive improvements, I could support that. But it would have to be limited, very limited. And so with that in mind, where could this revenue come from the people that would be fair? How about, taxes on consumption? So, you want to go buy a TV. You're going to buy $1,000 TV. You want a new big screen. We already pay about 10% on taxes, don't we? Average sale. Well, we're higher out here. You guys should see how much taxes in Vancouver, BC. Do you guys know BC stands for Bring Cash? Their tax rate is insane. But out here in Seattle, Pacific Northwest, all the tax rates are around 10%. It might be a lot less in some other places. But I think, there could just be a flat consumption tax of about 10%. And that revenue is going to be used for a small group of things that actually forward society. Like making sure that we're not living in traffic jams and spending 25 hours of our week in traffic every single day. Because that breeds quality of life. That makes it so the planet's less toxic. So we get rid of the income tax. It's gone. It's out the window. in its place, there's a tax on consumption. So the only time you're paying taxes is when you're deciding to go out and buy luxury items that you don't even really need. I'd also entertain the idea of taxing the investor class, because the way society is right now is the working class pays taxes, and the investor class who lives off the working class, they don't pay taxes. And if you're not aware, there's literally a handful of Americans who have more wealth than almost everyone in the nation combined. You know, there is a very small group of people. If you look at the wealth disparity of the nation, like if you pretended that the nation was 100 people, the nation was 100 people. One person out of those 100 people would have more income than 90 some of those people in the room, like probably about 95. One person would have more wealth than 95 out of that group. That's how wealth disparity is in this nation. And that one person, how they're making all their money is off investments, which means that they're inheriting the wealth that's created by all the people who are working and consuming. So those 95 people that they have more money than, it's because they're just continually just making money, just sitting back watching all the other 95 people work. They're like this, just like this every day, out by the pool, sipping things, you know, enjoying life. The other 95 people, they're in traffic for 25 hours. How is this sensible? How is this even possible? How can one person, you think that one person's that much smarter than everybody else in that group? You know, there's a lot of history to how it got to be that way, and it's not all intelligence. Some of it's, you know, ruthlessness, dishonesty, you know, psychopathy, and then eventually controlling a system that they helped build, system that needs to be undone. Okay, so with less revenue coming into the government, that means there has to be less expenses. And where are some big places we can save? We talked about where the three main expenditures are in government: military, education, and healthcare. Again, if we are taking care of ourselves as a people, if we're eating right, you know, if we have time to get out and exercise and enjoy life rather than sit in traffic for 25 hours, we're going to be a lot healthier. We're going to need a lot less expenditures for healthcare. We're going to save, you know, we're going to cut the healthcare expense by probably close to 100%, truly, if we actually took care of ourselves as a people, which we don't, if we weren't purposely poisoned by our government. 2, after the healthcare, the education thing. I talked about how we can drastically decrease the education bill too. We can make education way more efficient. We can cut down the number of years we're in school. We can save a bundle. And we can cut out a lot of the bureaucracy and oversight that these school districts have. Most money that's spent on school districts isn't even going to the children. It's going to all these administrators and just people that don't even need to be there, period. And then the other thing is the military. Just a glut of expense that's needless. Things like NASA that we spend over $50 million on a day. I'm sorry, I don't need NASA. The space program's never done a single thing for me. Not a lick. I don't need to spend over $50 million a day. And I might as well just say $60 million because it's just shy of $60 million. I don't need to spend $60 million a day on NASA. And realize that's just a small part of the military budget. We can save so much money by not wasting it on the things we do with military. What can I do with 60 million? How much of a, you know, high-speed electric rail system can I have built in how many cities over what period of time if I'm not spending 60 million a day on a space program that I don't have any need for, that none of us have any need for? Don't you love when you get the headlines like NASA researching cancer cures in space? Oh, that's what we need to cure cancer. research up in space, not people actually eating, a nutritious diet and taking care of themselves. People not giving themselves ulcers sitting in traffic for 25 hours. So we're going to drastically cut expenditures. For every $100 we're spending right now, we can probably spend $1. Probably cut expenses by times 100, literally. So if we have a lot less revenue coming in, that's fine, because we're going to have a lot less expenses too. I'm pretty sure we have enough military and hardware to defend the United States of America until the end of the world. So we're going to cut taxes, we're going to cut the government's revenue, but we're going to cut the expenses even more. Now, again, rehash from last time. Prisons, for my entire lifetime, it's been out there. It's said all the time, we build more prisons than we do schools. And what does that tell you about society? That means we've created a society that, by design, is putting people in cages. Of course, that's a result of a well-planned system, a system that depends on slavery, because almost everyone in those cages is used as slave labor. All those people work for major corporations for the most part. They are purposefully enslaved so that they can be exploited and work for, pennies per hour. And who's footing the bill for their cage? The taxpayers are. So this is another, atrocity of our society. We are wasting people's lives for corporate gain, and we who aren't living in the cages yet, we're paying for it. And then there's also for-profit prisons, which is even more sick. Stories every week about judges getting payola to give unfair sentences so that these people can, be put away for decades so that they can become someone's, profitable instrument by being enslaved. So we're not going to build any more prisons. We're going to make a point. We already have way too many prisons. It is just disgusting to thought to have to build another one. And not only are we not going to build any more prisons, but we're going to figure out how to get as many people as quickly as possible out of these cages so that they can be productive members of society. A huge percentage of those people in the cages are there because they violated the substance, policies of this nation, meaning that they used likely a plant that was deemed illegal by the government. This is insanity. We're free, but you can't smoke that plant over there. We're going to put you in a cage. This all has to be done away with. So right away, no more prisons being built, no more for-profit prisons, and we're going to figure out how to get as many people out as fast as possible and help them become successful members of society. And going back to the food thing earlier about how we need more local food, we need more organic food. Where I live right now in Yakima, it's an agricultural town, but there are open fields all over the place. Open fields everywhere that, they're just growing weeds. They got nothing going on them. The land's for sale. Guess what? That land is now going to become subsidized by the government, and it's going to be about growing food. And there's going to be a job, right away for these people coming out of prison. We got a place where you can get a paycheck right away. You're going to go work and help with our local agricultural system. And you don't want to do that, well, while you're there, you can also get some skills training. So if you want to transition into something else in society, we'll help you get there, But right away, you got a job, you got a place that you're going to be fed, and you're not going to live in a cage anymore. The reason most people who end up in cages for violent acts or thieving, it's because they did that because they had to survive. They didn't have any other way to feed themselves. And that's insane too. People who can't feed themselves, we have an abundance of food. We have more. How much food right now is in warehouses and grocery stores? We probably have enough food in packaging to feed the world over 100 times right now. Maybe not that many times, but several times. So, again, We got to become more sensible. And if all of a sudden you have an abundance of fields producing organic produce that people can afford, that food's going to get used, you know, and there's so many benefits that come out of it, including helping people get out of cages. And also law enforcement. It's just like the military. There's way too much of it. You know, any city I've ever been in, what I see when I walk around, fat cops parked on corners, harassing homeless people, way too many of these people. And have you ever needed a cop in your life? They're not there to help you. They're not there to help you. You know, what police are tax collectors with guns on their belt. You know, sitting there just waiting to give a guy a ticket who's probably going, 10 over down the road, big deal. You know, people who drive like assholes. That's another point I'm actually going to get to. Let's incentivize driving safe. You know, not getting tickets and not causing wrecks. Imagine if each year that you didn't cause a wreck, you got an extra $5,000 from the government. Nice little tax credit. And again, they can afford to do this. They're paying people $100,000 to buy Hummers. They can pay people $5,000 a year to drive safe. Maybe even $1,000 a year. Hey, I always drive safe anyway. If I got paid an extra $1,000 a year to drive safe, I'd be all for it. So anyway, I'm just throwing out some figures just rough. I'm just mostly trying to promote concepts here. But law enforcement, there's just way too much of it. It's not helpful to society. Most things that officers are supposedly out there to curb, they can be solved without the law enforcement, without the manpower. You know, stop giving people an incentive to, participate in crime. What's with this whole drug war? I know how to end the drug war in a snap. Just end it instantly. All drugs are now legal. All drugs are now legal. There's no incentive to, there's no reason for big profit. There's no reason to smuggle. There's no reason to murder people over snitching so that you might end up behind bars for life. Nope, there's none of this anymore. It's just all legal. You can do whatever. You can do whatever. But again, if society is about gearing young people to be sensible and intelligent and understand their body and to take care of themselves, and they got real education about drugs, and what's real education sound like? You know what? There's actually a positive experience that you can have as a human being using what we call drugs. Yeah, marijuana. Understand, all drugs can be abused or they can be used in a way that enhances your life experience. Marijuana. You know, children, did you know that a lot of great artists and entertainers and creative thinkers, they got their ideas while smoking marijuana? Did you know this? Because it's a fact. Now, understand, that doesn't mean that to have every great idea you need to smoke marijuana. It doesn't mean you should smoke marijuana all the time and abuse marijuana. It's more about, you're sitting down, you want to write a creative story, you want to come up with a poem, a song, you're trying to spark an idea. So maybe in that special moment, once a week, every other week, you smoke a little marijuana and you learn about sativa, how sativa stimulates creative thoughts, and how maybe you use indica if you're having trouble sleeping. Indica can help you take a nap, get to bed. What if you actually learned about how different drugs actually worked? Marijuana, there's something called CBD. You're in terrible pain. You smoke some CBD. Next thing you know, that pain's gone. That nausea is gone. You have trouble eating because you're in so much pain. You smoke some CBD, all of a sudden your appetite's restored. You're not in pain. If you were actually taught the benefits of drugs, and every drug has a good side and a bad side, every last one of them, So you educate the populace right. You teach them to be responsible what things are about. You know what? If drugs are legal, you're not going to have the epidemics. Of course, there's still going to be some addicts there. There's going to be addicts whether drugs are legal or illegal. But if drugs aren't illegal and there's an addict and there's somebody who actually wants help, well, then guess what? Then they can actually go get help without fear of being put in a cage. Simple. And of course, the government knows all this. The reason it's not this way is because we live in a system run by corporations and greedy people, and they want to incarcerate people, and they want to enslave people, and they want slave labor. Look at what the pharmaceuticals were a century ago. They were the plants that are now illegal drugs. What do you think happened between now and then? Do you think it's because people realized that they could grow their own marijuana? You know, they could produce their own cocaine. They could produce their own poppies and heroin. And somebody said, you know what? We need to make drugs that aren't so easy to make. You know, we need these man-made drugs. Yeah, this is what we need. And we need to ban all those plants. That's exactly what happened. That is 100% what happened. So end the drug war, end the prison culture, do something to help people, which isn't hard, you know. Local agriculture. I bet in the just in the like 4 square miles around me with all the empty fields around it, there's a ton of agriculture, but there's a lot of empty fields. You could probably put 1 million prisoners out to work here. And if people are like, oh my God, I don't want a community with 1 million prisoners, I mean, people would freak out. But look, if you provide those people with a place to stay, well, first of all, where I live, people wouldn't want 1 million people living in the community. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there's places like this all over the country where it can be done. It's not like 1 million people would have to come to one place. But the point is that there's enough room to create so much opportunity, you know, that this can be done all over. You know, you give these people a job and a salary and a place to stay. You give them some skills training. You help them get on the path they want to be on. Because isn't that the problem? You get out of prison, you get out of jail, nobody wants to hire you anymore. You know, you got this record, you know. So, got to change this whole culture. Got to create opportunities. And then here's another one, homelessness. Isn't it just tragic? Again, we live in a nation where there's just so much wealth, there's so much abundance. Back in 2012, there was the popular statistic about how there were more vacant homes, you know, at the end of the real estate crisis there, more vacant homes that had been seized by banks than there were homeless people in the nation. Think about that. That stat told it all about what's wrong with society and how greedy it is. The banks holding all these properties, holding more properties than there were homeless people. That means there was a house for every person out on the street. And of course, the thing about a lot of homeless people is, you know, they have some sort of mental problem. They often are somewhat dangerous. They're addicts. You know, if you brought them into your house to care for them, they'd probably steal your stuff. They'd probably create some real problems in your world. And trust me, I know all about this from working with the homeless. But that doesn't mean that these people should be abandoned and left on the streets to create even more problems in society. Because that's what's going on right now in all the cities that have the major homeless epidemics. The West Coast has, you know, more homeless than anybody. And in the downtown areas, it's hard to be, you know, a shopkeeper because you have homeless people coming in, stealing from you, you know, defecating in front of your door. You know, and there's a lot of hatred for the homeless right now because of all this. But these people have been abandoned, and these are the consequences of society being unjust. So what can be done for homeless? Well, the same type of thing that can be done for, you know, prisoners. Homeless are actually probably a more difficult population to work with, but they can be helped too. I've worked with the homeless. If you treat anybody with respect for the most part, you're going to be able to have success with them. Even if they have mental problems, you know, even if they're, you know, prone to violence, if you're respectful towards them and you take care of them, you know, anybody who's, I mean, it can be a challenge, trust me. These people can still attack you anyway. You can be their caretaker, bring them food, talk to them nice. You might still get attacked by these people, but if you don't attack back and, you know, you use a calm voice, you can still help de-escalate them. The point is, there's people in the world who have these skills. There can be more people in the world to train to have these skills. If you create, you know, an agriculture camp for homeless people to come live at, where they can come and have food and not have to thieve to get food and help cultivate food for other people and help take care of other people, you can solve a major problem. You know, Go to Seattle. Go down. Just go walk around Seattle for a few hours in the morning and see what it looks like. You're going to see police buzzing to every corner, ambulance buzzing to every corner, nonstop throughout the day. Homeless fire. I don't mean like a physical fire. I just mean putting out like the latest problem from the homeless person all day. And who's paying for all this? The taxpayers are. They're paying for this. And it's just nonstop. It's sirens all day. The latest homeless problem, the latest injured homeless person, the latest, homeless overdose, the latest homeless killing, the latest, homeless person found dead in the alleyway. Nonstop, all day, every day, getting worse every day. How's this an efficient use of resources? Paying to just constantly react to the latest problem. Imagine if you could. I would love to see how much money is spent, responding to the latest homeless problem. I guarantee you, it would be a small fraction of what would cost to set up, a camp where these people could have a place to work and feed themselves. And you know what? If they have a drug addiction, do their drugs and have counselors on site to help them. Help them with their problem. Because right now Seattle's done the passing out the needle thing, and that's not working out either because needles are just ending up all over the city. It's got to be done somewhere, more remote. Like honestly, like out by like where I live, So, but all these things need to be treated. I mean, by not, it's all combining to the decline and destruction of society. I mean, it's awful. It's awful. You can't just turn a blind eye to it. And you also have to realize how it happened. In the 80s, when Reagan was president, he shut down all of the mental health facilities, essentially. And all of a sudden, there was this rapid spike in the homeless population. And in, the last decade, the homeless population's growing much further. And why is that? That's because of all the economic policies that are in place. They're taking wealth from the middle class and poorest people and taking it to the very top. So the people at the very bottom, they have nothing. They have nothing. We're living in the trickle up economy, more like the vacuum up economy. The wealth disparity is growing at a rapid rate. And, it's not good for anybody. So Amazon in Seattle, Amazon, what did they do? Amazon went into Seattle and they created 100,000 new jobs. And the average job of those 100,000 jobs makes over 100,000 a year, which sounds great and all. Sounds great. But the problem with that is it happened so fast, it jacked everything up. Rents went up, property taxes went up, housing rates went up. And a lot of people found that they couldn't afford to live in the city anymore. Everything just went right out from under them. And when you start to think about it, somebody will just say, well, that's just, that's Darwinism. That's the survival of the fittest. That's, the strong survive, the weak perish. But really, when you look at a company like Amazon, you can't say that the company's not genius. And, but the thing is, what Amazon has done is it's destroyed a lot of other businesses. A lot of businesses that used to be in Seattle don't exist anymore because nobody shops there because they buy everything through Amazon. So the reason Amazon has so much wealth is because it's so concentrated. They sucked up. Have you ever seen that movie, There Will Be Blood, the Daniel Day-Lewis movie, when he's talking about how he sucked up the guy's milkshake, all the oil under his land? I mean, that's essentially what Amazon is. They sucked up everybody else's milkshake. They have everybody's milkshake. And that's also why there's so many more homeless people now in Seattle and other places like it, because that is what's going on in the nation. So there has to be sensibility to things. And, to go back in time, once upon a time, a corporation could only exist for a short period of time, for a temporary project. For example, when they were building the railroads, massive projects, massive steel, massive amount of labor, building, a transportation structure that's going to go across thousands of miles. You needed to pool this wealth to make this project happen. And the way it used to work is that the corporation could exist from the start of the project until the end of the project, but then it had to be ended as soon as the project was over, because it was understood that if you let something be so powerful that just other people aren't going to be able to compete. They're going to be driven out. It's not going to be good for society. And once upon a time, the Supreme Court of the land ruled that, oh, never mind. This is a free nation. People should be able to be free to have corporations. And the next thing you know, they voted on corporate personhood. And then corporations essentially became like people. And, that's where we are now with the voting and stuff. It's, a corporation seen as a person. They can, anyway, the point is, sensibility. Corporations aren't sensible. They are about profit. And that's all they're about. They're about profit and protecting their business interests. And if you look at any publicly traded company, any publicly traded corporation, they have one sole objective, and that is to return a profit for their shareholders at all expenses. That's why you have Nestle. Nestle's, I'm just picking on a company here, but you have a company like Nestle, and look at what they do to the world. They go around and they suck up everybody's water supply. These water supplies that, right now there's still enough water in most places, so people aren't freaking out. It's not an epidemic. But Nestle really is draining a lot of local communities' water supplies so that they can put the water in a bottle and then charge a bundle for it, in the free market. But really, there's going to be major consequences for this down the road. There's going to be communities that are out of water. Look at what's going on in India and other parts of the world. South America, there are places that are almost out of water. And you know what? Nestle's been there too, sucking up their water in these other corporations. They don't care about people. They just care about a profit. They'll do anything for a profit. They'll destroy this whole planet. They'll destroy a whole community, a whole nation for a profit. You got some guy going, well, that's what made the world great. Dude, wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. All right. Next bullet point. If you go down and read my comments, somebody didn't like my 8th bullet point. They thought that this was wrong. They said, children don't need role models. They need parents. Well, I don't disagree, okay? But my bullet point here is children in today's world. First of all, they don't have parents because, this is true for many parents, they don't have parents because their parents are out working, enslaving, and, they're just trying to pay the bills so that little Johnny and, the rest of the family doesn't end out living under the overpass, because that's the reality for so many Americans. So children, they don't have, so many children, they don't have a family dynamic. They don't have parents to teach them values and realize, we're deep into this now. There's so many parents who grew up in the same situation. They didn't get good parenting because they didn't have a family around. Understand this. Years ago, when women were encouraged to get in the workplace, you have to realize what happened. By women going into the workplace, it doubled the workforce, which halved the cost of labor. So that's why once upon a time when, the traditional family, the woman stayed home, the nurturer took care of the family, the man went out and worked. Back then, if you go and look, the average family actually had a better income. They had more wealth, and they actually had a family that was held together because there was a parent, a homemaker, to be there with the child. But then once the women went into the workforce, and realize, don't be out there saying this is sexist or something. This is just a fact. When women went out of the workforce, it halved the cost of labor. So next thing you knew, you had both parents working, bringing in about the same amount of revenue. And somehow it's gotten even worse because of all the greed. So the reality is now you have both parents working and together making less of a wage than they would have made, a half century ago. So it's better than 2 for the price of 1. But this is what happened. And not only did you lose, a better economic position, you lost the home. So anyway, most of us know this is the reality of the situation. People just trying to stay afloat. A lot of single parents too. I mean, that's the other thing. When you don't have a family, there's just all sorts of societal breakdown. How many people are having affairs because they met somebody else at their workplace? I mean, is this not happening everywhere? There's reasons that, things were better before they are now. So anyway, the family's destroyed. Children don't have good parenting overwhelmingly. They're going to state schools where they're having people teach them who probably shouldn't be teaching them because they're not very smart themselves. They don't have the best value themselves. They're only teachers because they couldn't achieve anything else in the world. It's not that hard to become a teacher. These are the facts of the matter. And you're looking at someone who was a teacher. So trust me, I know. I definitely know. People in the education system, a lot of them, they have no business being there. They don't even like children. It's just the way they figured out how to get a paycheck to stay afloat. But because this is the reality for children, they do need a positive message in the world. And if you're going to be the leader of a nation, because every child knows the name of the president. If you're going to be the president of the United States, you should be probably taking a period of time, at least once a week, through this thing that we call the television, the radio, the internet, to address children. Tell them a good story each week. Tell them a reason to be inspired. Easy. Because as a child, you probably respect and admire the president. Your parents probably teach you that that's the right. Well, I don't know about anymore. I mean, things are a lot different now. But anyway, the president's supposed to be a position that's looked up to. Imagine being a child and every week you get this address from the president, and the president not filling the children's head with some nonsense. He's telling them why it's important to eat healthy, why it's important to work hard, why it's important to study now and get ahead in the world, why it's important to be a good person, why it's important to live by the golden rule. Of course, you're not going to get this from any of the goons that we get for leaders because these people are criminals and tyrants. But I'm just saying, this is the way it should be. So, all right, the 9th bullet point, ending the drug war. I got into that with the discussion about prisons. Hold on, let me see here. Okay. So we talked about ending the drug war. We don't need to hit that bullet point again. I combined it with the prison one. Bullet point 10, abolishing federal propaganda and news media. And, George W. Bush commented on this when he was president. There's an act out there actually that makes it okay for the government to provide propaganda to the news networks that are meant to steer the people a certain way. And just think about it. Does that sound like something that should be happening? Does that sound like something that's good for society? Or does that sound like the mind control trying to exploit and take advantage of the populace, which of course it is? So that needs to be ended at once. Right there with the taxing of income. Out goes the IRS, out goes the taxing of income, and out goes the sanctioned propaganda stories in the media. And I could go on, more on that bullet point too. I think something seriously needs to be done about the poison that's spread through the media every single day. Because look at the news, it is poison. It's misinformation, it's fear. Somehow this needs to be sanctioned and done away with. I'm all for freedom, but I'm not for things that, have the minds of the masses and are just constantly attacking and destroying and instilling negativity and fear and division, because that's what the media is. If you're going to be a news network, there needs to be some rules. Like at least X amount of your, whatever you're reporting needs to be something that's positive in some way. You need to be able to show how that's positive. And realize it's not about the government like dictating what you need to show, but just some guidelines. X amount of your reporting needs to be positive. And why not? Because right now it's almost 100% negative. And how's that doing for people? You know, you have to realize this stuff exists in the world. It's out there. Everybody has a TV. Everyone's getting the same negative experience from this. So how do we fix it? You know, how do we fix it? I think when you turn on the news, what you should get is, okay, and positive means like identifying X amount of America is obese right now. Here are ways, if you're an American suffering from obesity, here are some ways to solve that are very attainable. Quit soda, quit sugar, quit, this. Put this in your diet. And really, shouldn't that be the news story that almost everyone's getting hit with every day? Because that is the epidemic in this nation. Are you having trouble sleeping? Again, the news could be about helping people with all the ailments they're having. These are things people are having problems with. They can't sleep. They're obese. They're sick. They're depressed. They feel like they don't have skills. They feel like they're trapped. So why not every day is the news about helping people solve the epidemics that almost everyone's suffering from? What's wrong with that? That sounds like what should be in the news. What people need. Of course, we know why it's not this way. So I'm saying, what needs to happen? How else are we going to solve these problems? I'm all for freedom, but I'm not for tyranny. And I'm all for stopping tyranny too. I know what tyranny is. The news is a big part of it. Okay, bullet point 11. We talked about this last time as well. Shrinking and eventually abolishing the federal government. I think really like the vision for shrinking and abolishing. It's like we can say, look, it's the 21st century. The federal government should have done this, this, and this for the nation in the time it's existed. It hasn't done it yet. So we're going to achieve these things. And then once we're done with that mission, we're going to wrap it up and we're going to hand it over to the state governments. We'll have 50 state governments. We'll figure out how to have like a council of governors so that we can stay on the page as things as a nation. But we don't need this federal government dictating people's lives. We'll leave it up to the state. But maybe before we wrap it up, we solve some projects, like maybe we get that high-speed rail system that the nation should have. Unless the people don't want it. I mean, put these things to a vote too, not just dictate, but I imagine people would want that. Why not? Energy efficient, safe way to travel, time efficient, What else needs to be done? Maybe we solve the energy crisis. Maybe we revolutionize solar energy. We help people get affordable solar energy, geothermal, this type of thing. There could be some agreed to things that need to be accomplished that maybe could be done at a federal level. And then once that's wrapped up, we're just done. We don't need a federal government anymore. We already got state government. We don't need government on top of government. So people say, what about the military? Why can't the 50 states come to an agreement? I'm sure it can be done. So I don't have all the answers right now, but I just know that this federal government is too much. It hasn't done anything positive for humanity. It's just helped bring about this new world order. Here's a bullet point I added since last time: ending all aid to Israel. Israel. Give them billions of dollars every single year. Why? I think we can end aid to a lot of places, honestly. This nation's suffering. There's people all over this nation suffering. Our next door neighbor's suffering. What does Israel need any money for? They're self-sufficient. They're a pretty rich nation. We really need to give them billions of dollars? No. No. We got suffering people right here. We don't need to be, dishing out money overseas. We've given them money for years. They can give us money back. We can request Israel to subsidize our poor communities. We did a lot for you. Your turn to give something back. We've been supporting you for how long? 71 years? That's enough. How about you subsidize us for the next 71 years? A lot of people here could use it. So we're ending all aid to Israel. Done. Over. Got any problems with it, Israel? I got a military to use. You've been causing a lot of problems in the world. As far as I'm concerned, you're a terrorist state. I think the world might be better off without you, to be perfectly honest. So no more aid for Israel. Done. Maybe we need to help people escape all the mind control and mind conditioning that they got for the reasons they believe Israel needs to exist. We're going to make sure everybody knows about the Balfour Declaration and the planning of Israel during World War I, because that's a fact. See, everyone's under all this mind control. Oh, Israel's because of World War II. Nope, not at all. Completely false. It was all planned during World War I. In fact, let's go back and revisit history. Americans did not support the British. The American people supported the Germans in World War I. That's where the heart of the people was. They supported the Germans. But how did that change? It changed when the papers, and we know who controls the papers, changed when the papers started pushing propaganda that Kaiser Wilhelm was the Antichrist. That's what they published every day in their papers and their headlines. Kaiser Wilhelm is the Antichrist, exploiting those Christian types. They said, oh my God, he's the Antichrist. Well, we can't support the Antichrist. Who should we fight for? Oh, Britain, the empire that the sun never sets on. And then Rothschild, the bankers were over there. They said, yeah, you come over here and you fight for us and you fight against Germany. We'll deliver the Zionist nation of Israel. And that's exactly what happened. And why isn't that taught in every history book? So that's what I mean when I say history is mostly not helpful, but there's some history lessons that could be taught, like the truth of how Israel really came to be, that it was a planned agenda that helped bring about a second needless world war. How the Jewish people who were put in concentration camps were actually used as essentially lab rats to bring about a planned agenda, which is 100% fact. So Israel, from its core, is based on a lie and, is truly a place of evil. It is truly a terrorist state. It's a place that gets away with murder every single day. And a place that uses the lie every day to defend its actions and its existence. It's probably the nation in the world that should be the last that we donate any money to. And while we're talking about Israel, I think it should be brought to everyone's attention the dancing Israelis on September 11th who went on TV in Israel and talked about how they were in the U.S. to document the events of September 11th, which clearly means that they had foreknowledge, and which means that Israel had a hand in what happened on 9/11. And this is a nation that we're giving billions of dollars to every year, a nation that helped plan and execute and document, probably the worst thing to ever happen in this country, something that scarred a lot of people's minds. Of course, the leader of Israel at the time, Ehud Barak, is the first man to go on TV and say the U.S. needs to declare a war on terrorism against Afghanistan and Iraq, which is exactly what we did. And how many Americans have died needlessly for that war? And not just Americans. I mean, how many people have died needlessly? They say, who even knows what the real figures are? There's all sorts of estimates for how many people have been killed in the wars. But imagine what we've done. All the bombings, the drone attacks. Sick. Israel has a big part of it. You see any of these people up on the stage on either side of the aisle willing to talk about this? You don't. You don't. Doesn't matter who the next puppet president is. They're going to bow down for Israel. You can bet on that. They're going to be like Donald Trump wearing the little hat, touching the Western Wall on Jerusalem Day. You can count on that. They say Obama had rough relations with Israel. Yeah, as he went out of office, giving them a record incentive package, 38 billion more. What can we do with $38 billion? Tell you what, a whole lot better things than give it to Israel. That's for sure. Okay, something else. Added some more bullet points. I think we should incentivize good driving. You know, if we did, we could take a lot of cops off the road, tax collectors that add to the traffic jams. Don't you just hate it when a cop pulls somebody over in traffic? The person probably wasn't even doing anything in the first place. Who cares if they're going 10 over as long as they're driving fine? Then everybody's driving even slower to look at the cop sirens. You know, you're like, what's this traffic jam? And then you just realize it's everybody slowed down to look at the cop car. Or then the cop even makes sure he parks so that he blocks the whole lane. It's like, come on, man. It's already a traffic jam and now you're blocking the lane needlessly. So anyway, how about just being proactive about this? How about incentivizing good driving? Of course, I realize the mathematical problem here from the government's point of view. They want to collect money, not give it out. But at the same time, if you can drastically reduce the police workforce instead of paying all these officers, and just think about how much officers are getting, you know, all the money, all the vehicles, you know, all the gas expenditure. Just think about all the officers patrolling right now. Imagine how much money's been spent on fuel by officers in the time I've been giving this demonstration. All the officers just driving all over, you know, probably like $1 million in fuel a minute. So anyway, instead of doing that, imagine if you just said, you know what? You drive this year, you don't cause a single wreck that's not your fault. You know, you don't get a ticket, you get $1,000. Or maybe it's even better than that. I don't know. We'll see what we can work out. We'll have to see what the mathematics are. But even $1,000, I'm sure all sorts of people would go for that. How many people would drive extra safe to get an extra $1,000 a year? I think a lot of people would. Why not? Again, we were giving out $100,000 if you bought a Hummer. How insane is that? It's like the worst government policy you could ever think of. So anyhow, incentivize safe driving. And you know what? Today I feel extra. Today I had like one of the weirdest. Don't you hate when you almost get hit because you're like your adrenaline flows, right? And you get that feeling, and it's not a good feeling. I don't know what this guy was doing today. I was at the post office, and big long post office lot, and I was parked right near the exit. I had to back out my car and then just drive forward a few feet to get out of the lot. And when I was backing out, I noticed there was this red truck, and this lot's long. This lot's probably like 100 yards long. He was back at the end of the lot, but I could see that he was moving fast in his big red truck towards me. And for a minute, I thought, maybe I'll just sit here and not back up. But I was like, no, I still have time to back up and go forward. But I could just see how aggressive he was driving through this lot in his big truck. So I back up, and I start to go forward. And it's not like I cut him off or anything. But so I get out of the lot, and I start to go down the street. And the street's a 30-mile-per-hour street, right? And he comes out behind me, and I notice that as we're going down the street, I probably pulled out like, 15 seconds before him, whatever. But he was coming up, flying up on me on the street, right? Just flying up the street, and he's coming right up towards my tail. And I'm like, geez, is this guy gonna rear end me? It almost looked like he was gonna crash into me. So I actually accelerated to go faster. I probably sped up to 40. And then I saw this guy was just like, flailing his arms. And so we're still going down the road, and there's a stop sign up ahead, and I have to stop, and I'm gonna make a left at the stop sign. As I'm coming up on this stop sign, this guy ends up having to roast his brakes to not crash into the back of me. And it's like, okay, dude. First of all, he's probably mad that I did back up and got in front of him in the parking lot, which, had he been driving at a normal rate in the parking lot, it wouldn't have been anything. I mean, he's down at the other end. I'm backing up already. but then he just drives like a maniac down this 30-mile-per-hour road. It was almost like I kind of think he was going to rear end me from behind while we were going down on the road, but then he almost doesn't stop in the stop sign, and he's an older man too. And then I see him flailing his arms in the mirror after he has to roast his brakes. It's just, anyway, I can't stand drivers like that. And I just think like sometimes maybe a guy like that, maybe if you had an incentive to not drive like an asshole, maybe, he'd be less inclined to do. Because I mean, people like that, they're just like the kind of people that ruin other people's day, you know? There wasn't any reason for him to be all stressed out. Just drive down the road, man. You're at the post office. You can't be in any kind of crazy big hurry. You're not in some life emergency. So anyway, there just needs to be something to do to incentivize better driving and also, like I said earlier, to get people off the road. Both those things need to be done. Better drivers, safer drivers, less drivers. And all those things can be done and accomplished. So anyhow, I think those are all different ideas that we should be discussing as a society. Maybe not all of these ideas need to be implemented, but I think they're all things worth exploring. You know, these are things that touch our lives every single day: food, nutrition, wellness, education, the workplace, traffic. So, oh yeah, something else that I thought of is, maybe if you don't own a vehicle, if you don't drive, period, you rely on walking, public transportation, biking, maybe you should get a giant payment each year from the government, and by giant, I mean like maybe in the neighborhood of 20,000, as long as you're a working person. It can't be that you're just like some deadbeat that just lives on your couch all day, but there'd be some, and it could be through a tax credit too. So maybe 20,000 is too much, but I'm just saying, a lot of money is spent by our government on a lot of crazy things that don't need to exist. So if we could incentivize people to do things that make the world better and solve problems, I think it would be worth it. How much money do we have freed up if we're not paying over, nearly 60 million a day to NASA? How much does that free up to incentivize good driving? You know what I mean? How much money is freed up if we're not, spending it all on police and ambulance to go respond to every latest firestorm from, the latest homeless casualty that doesn't need to be happening. So I'll leave it there. If anybody wants to call in, oh man, it's already after 11 p.m. I'll stay on here for 25 more minutes if anybody wants to call in. I guess I've been talking for 2 hours. If anybody wants to call in, the number is 509-731-0567. Again, 509-731-0567. Maybe everybody already went to bed though, but it is pretty late. Let me see what's going on in the chat here. Maybe we're not even connected. Oh, it looks like we are still live. Why do I have this commercial? Let's see. I hear you on the slower traffic, keep right, but the story I was just talking about was on a one-lane street, so it wasn't like, and also it's a residential street. I hate when people fly down streets that homes live on, I think that's a really rude thing to do. So that's how people's pets get run over. That's how children get hit. So the guy who I was talking about behind me was a maniac, He's the kind of guy who should have his license taken away. Like, I think that's the only thing traffic cops should be doing, is just looking for horrible drivers and just one-time offense. Sorry, you don't get to drive anymore. There's too many people on the road already. Big asshole in your red truck. Sorry, no more license for you. So, oh, I completely agree about the vaccines. Yeah, that should be one of my bullet points. I'll add that. No more vaccines, of course. So that goes with my make food your medicine policy. Let's see. South Lake Tahoe. Caller?
Hey, what's up, Zach? How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to say that I never really thought about the whole man-made drug thing. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, why the hell is Vicodin legal? And you can take a Vicodin, but a hydrocodone. And I don't know why. It's very simple to me, but like poppies and stuff like that, like you can't really grow them like marijuana and stuff. And it's probably because like all those Masons, you know, like George Washington, like a long time ago, they probably figured like, yeah, we got to make some sort of synthetic way because this is a cash crop. You know what I mean? So I was just thinking about that, and I think that was a really good point.
Yeah, I was going to say you can grow poppies though. They're not that hard to grow either. I mean, it depends on what your climate is, but that's something that can be grown as well.
Oh yeah, cocaine and all that stuff, and it's actually probably like less worse for you, and it's more like natural form than all the shit they put in.
Of course it is. Isn't it crazy the way they advertise these things? It's like, take this for some little minor condition. And then at the end, in the nice friendly guy voice or the nice woman voice, they read off the million different side effects, and you're like, wow, would anybody really take that for that minor little problem if you could have all those different side effects? It's like suicide, depression, anal bleeding. And it's like, what? I mean, who would ever take that? So it's insanity, man.
Pretty messed up.
So yeah.
I don't know. As there's like a lot of things. I'm not like a huge conspiracy theorist. I'm not like a crazy paranoid person or whatever. But have you ever heard of like gang stalking or anything like that?
I've experienced it.
I feel like it's 1984, and I feel like there's this. Well, not that I feel like. I actually know because for like a long time, like I wanted to be in the entertainment industry, and I'm from like Long Beach, California, and I knew Malcolm McCormick like personally, like Mac Miller. Like I have a lot of famous friends and stuff, and like I used to ghostwrite for people. And just this crazy stuff. If you look up my name real quick, you'll find like articles or whatever. And I could go on and on about this shit because like I lived in this fucked up like society of like an underworld and stuff where there's just like really dark satanic things happening. It doesn't really matter if it's real or not, but these people are like political Zionists. I don't know if I wanted to point up something too. Did you know that Trump is like trying to be approved to build a tower at the Dome of the Rock?
His head is on the side of a shekel along with the third temple. The funds are being raised to build the third temple. Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah, well, if you've ever studied Isaac Newton, he like in his theories where he's talking about the Dome of the Rock and stuff like that, he's talking about how like it's not actually going to be built by Israel. It's going to be built by a country like Britain or America, which actually like he said like 1944 was when the Jews were going to be freed. And then, you know, what happened like World War II, obviously. And so it just makes sense that like a different country or whatever, according to his predictions, you know, I don't know if they're like, if it's organic or if they're just trying to play it out. But yeah, it's crazy, man. Every single day I see more and more pieces, and then just like, I don't know how anybody could believe that's a coincidence at this point. Like, there's just so many things. Like the thing you always bring up with the Trump and the 9/11 where the sheep are standing on towers. Like, how do you not look at that shit and just be like, there's got to be something messed up? Did you hear his joke the other day when he was talking about the stage collapsing?
I didn't.
Yeah, so he was giving a speech when they were signing a bill for like the 9/11 fundraiser thing, and he literally made a joke about like the stage collapsing. And like, how are you going to do that to a bunch of like 9/11 first responders? Like, what? Like, how sadistic and like sociopathic you got to be? Like,
well, that's what he is. He is a sociopath, and the only reason he has any supporters is because there's so many sociopaths in this world. People in the chat want to know what your name is based on what you said a couple of minutes ago.
Oh yeah, and to do with that too, because so there's this song that happened after like this what I'm about to tell you. So I actually got stabbed by somebody I thought was a really good friend of mine. But in the underworld of Masons and stuff, no matter where you go and how far away, I was in North Dakota, and my name is Joshua Summerhill, but I ended up getting stabbed by one of my close friends after all this shady shit happened. I was working for a old black dude named Rick, and he's like a plumber or whatever. And I've met a lot of Masons and stuff in my life, like people that flat out tell me they're Masons, and I just kind of laugh and don't believe them. But like I heard him talking about all this crazy stuff, and luckily I was on a native reservation, and the Native Americans backed me up, and they kind of like sensed the vibes or whatever. But and I had people that weren't really in on it, were more partial to their own families. But there's just been a lot of crazy things that were surrounding that or whatever. Like they told me I was like Thoth or whatever from like a young age. Like all these people, all these weird people like that come in your life. Because when they select you to be these like so-called gods or whatever, and Thoth comes to 71. But like
hey, caller, I appreciate you calling in. I'm gonna move on though, just because I'm only gonna be on for a little bit, and a lot of people are trying to call in. But thanks for calling in, Joshua. You have a good night, man.
Yeah, you too, man.
Caller, you're on.
Yeah. Hey, Zach, big time listener, first time to call. Great presentation tonight. Really great ideas. It's such a breath of fresh air compared to the debate tonight. And I'm sorry to hear about your house getting vandalized.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. I'm really irritated about that. So.
Yeah, that sucks, man. Well, I wanted to call about a really interesting story coming out of New York, and I'll be brief because I know there's a lot of people who want to talk. Last week, the Franklin Square Fire Department came public with a resolution petitioning the U.S. government to perform a new unbiased investigation into the cause of the building destruction on 9/11. Their petition says that, quote, overwhelming evidence presented in said petition demonstrates beyond any doubt that pre-planted explosives and or incendiaries, not just airplanes and the ensuing fires, caused the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center buildings, killing the vast majority of victims who perished that day. And they also imply that numerous other fire departments in New York will be joining their fight for justice. The commissioner said, quote, we're a tight-knit community, and we never forget our fallen brothers and sisters. You better believe that when the entire fire service of New York State is on board, we will be an unstoppable force. We were the first fire district to pass this resolution. We won't be the last. So if anyone wants to read more about this, you can go to ae911truth.com or .org. That's the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, and it's one of their most recent news articles.
Good information. I appreciate it, caller. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Zach.
All right, have a good night. Take care. Oh, let's see. Caller?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, let me shut off this video.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Damn it. Yeah, I just got to move it away. Last night I had seen a video that was on the channel, and it was a great tutorial, a primer for everything you've done for 6 years. And I tried to check on some other data and came back and paged back, and it was gone. Can you reissue?
Are you talking about the video that I said, like why I talk about Gematria every day, that video?
Correct.
So here's how you get to that video. If you go to your YouTube search and just like search my channel name, Gematria Effect News.
Right.
If you go to that, and then if you click on the channel, and then you click, what in the world? Caller, you got to figure out how to mute the video in the background.
Okay, yeah, let me, damn it, here, let me plug this in to block off the audio, and done.
Well, I don't know why. Normally when you go to the home page, it should show the video, because I made it the featured video. I don't know why it's not there right now. What I was planning to show you didn't work. But so here's the other thing you can do. You can go to videos, and then you can go to, let's see what happens if you just search the keyword Gematria. See if it pulls it up. I'll have to redo my That is weird. It's supposed to be the video that pops up. Okay, I'll fix that, but next time you go to the thing and go to home, it should pop up as the video that's there. I didn't undo that setting, so I don't know why it's not that way anymore. But, or you can search, what did I call the video? Why I talk about Gematria, is that what I called it? I can't remember. It's supposed to be the video that shows up as my introduction, which it was last time I checked, so I'm glad you notified me that it's not this way.
Yeah, I've left multiple messages trying to get you to re-up it, and I've followed you since, I don't know, 6 years, and I've got multiple sock accounts, Observant, to Hieronymus Bosch, Luigi Trebuchet, and I use them all, to deal with shills.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, I do not know why that disappeared from that page, but I will figure out what the title of that video is and get it back up there, so...
because Zach, I followed you for 6 years, and I think it's a great primer. It's something, you're doing videos all the time and diagnosing and breaking everything down, but that's a primer to educate. And there was like Manly P. Hall, and there was a couple other books that you listed, and I think it's most important for people watching your channel if they get that video again, because I think that's the most cogent, compact data.
It's so if you go to my videos tab, if you do go to the videos tab and scroll down a little bit, it's this one that has the ABC123 as the thumbnail. It's called "Why This Channel Is About Gematria."
ABC123.
It's supposed to pop up as the top video when you go to the homepage, and I don't know why it's not, but this is the one. Why This Channel Is About Gematria. The thumbnail's at ABC123, like chalk on a blackboard.
Right.
Yeah. So
I wanted to add, I'm an old geezer, 65. I grew up in Tempe, Arizona.
Hey.
And I took part in the 1969 war moratorium against the Vietnam War in front of Old Main on ASU campus. So I've been, working to put out truth, forever, for literally ever, and I'm not young.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't know if you know, I went to Arizona State University, so I used to live down there too.
Absolutely, I saw that, and that's why. And then you went to Mountain View High School. I saw that in some video or I guess on about your channel, and that's why I figured I'd mention it. So much for Tempe. It was beautiful. 64 years ago. It's a shithole now, like Boulder or California or Santa Fe or anywhere. It's the new world odor.
Right on. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate the call. Thanks for sticking around so long, and hopefully I've helped you find that video. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great primer for anybody watching. It's the best thing. I really feel so strongly about it. If you could re-up that so when you come to the homepage, it's just right there like it was last night, and now it's gone. Yeah,
I'll fix that. YouTube must have tampered with my page because it was up there, so I'll get that fixed.
Yeah, it was either Scroogle or SpewTube that did it, I figured.
Yeah, no doubt. So thanks for the heads up.
Thanks.
All right, you have a good night.
Thanks for all your work, Zach. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. You take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Caller?
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, is this Zach?
It is.
Oh, hi. Thank you for answering. I appreciate it so much. I didn't expect this. So real quick, I just wanted to talk to you real quick because I find a great way to wake up, like, my friends and family. When I talk about, the Freemasonry, it really helps them to wake up and to know the evil stuff that they did when they created our country. So I was talking to my brother-in-law, and I know that his father has been a detective in the police department for over 30 years. And I said, Riley, ask your father about the Freemasons. I know that the Freemasons have a huge hand in the police. Your father will know what they are. And he texted his father. He said, hey, Dad, Mark wants to know if you ever, what a Freemason is. And sorry, I'm just kind of nervous. And he said, yes, I do. I know people inside of that weird satanic cult. So for people, some people think it's a conspiracy theory that these Freemasons are, satanic and evil and Luciferian, but it's really not once you get up to, the 33rd degrees. But my main question is with NASA, since you were talking about corporations, taking the taxpayers' money, with NASA, do you believe that they are hiding our true Earth from us? with all these Freemasons in space and, you know, not actually going to space, do you think that there is a space and planets and, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, it's all speculation, and I'm sure there's a lot they're hiding from us. And essentially what I have to say is, look, I mean, if there is a space or not, it doesn't really seem to truly be impacting what's going on down here on Earth. And again, the whole argument I'm just sticking to is, look, we spend literally almost $60 million a day on NASA. What's it really doing for humanity? What else? If we're going to spend $60 million of taxpayer money a day, is this the most effective use? All the other questions are interesting questions. I don't have the answers. I don't know. But, you know, all I've seen those types of things do for the truth community, because essentially those questions are bigger than we are. Like, we as little tiny people on this planet, we cannot prove those things one way or the next. So I don't even want to suggest any comment that's just going to start some argument. But
oh no, there would be no argument. I completely understand. But
well, I'm just saying in the chat, an argument would erupt no matter what I say. So
okay.
Yeah,
because I do respect a lot of what you say, and I listen to everyone's opinion no matter what it is. But last thing, because I do believe that do you believe there is a God and that we were created in God's image? And you know what I mean? Or are we just matter and...
No, I absolutely believe there's a creator. People ask me this question every day. I'm just like, well, I guess people haven't seen that many of my videos, but I've probably been asked that question 1,000 times in the 6 years I've been doing this. And I would say, yeah, I do think there's a creator. But I'm not religious, and I honestly do believe that God did create the world, but it doesn't seem like God is intervening. So the belief that God created the world, but God's kind of like kicking back and watching creation, I think that's the way it is. So for all the people waiting for God or a savior, I think that's wrong, and that's what's been brought to us by religion, and that's what the controllers want. They want these complacent people. So
yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you so much for answering, and hopefully I am on your next live and I can call again, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it, man.
Wonderful night.
Yeah, you too. You take care.
Bye.
For the person in the chat who keeps asking if I have something against women in the workplace, the answer is no. The point I made is about what happened when women entered the workplace by doubling the labor population and cutting the cost of labor in half, and what's that's done for society and in the family. You know, there's women who are completely competent in the workplace. What I can honestly say, though, about working in environments where I work around women is women are a lot more chatty people, and women tend to gossip more, and women tend to get distracted more easily. I think there is something to, you know, efficiency in the workplace being at a higher capacity when women aren't there. And I don't mean that in any sexist way. I just mean that from personal experience. Women like to chat. Women like to talk. You know, women like to get off task, and so do men. But I've worked in places where it's all men. I've worked in places where it's men and women. And, you know, there's also relationships and sexual dynamics, all the same things that I was talking about before. So, you know, you ever been in a workplace where like you dated somebody and then maybe the relationship didn't work out, and then, you know what I'm saying. So I think once upon a time when men worked mostly and women stayed home and took care of the family, I think that was a better time. Not because women aren't competent in the workplace, just because that's more the natural order of things. You know? So. All right, I got time for one last caller. Otherwise, we can wrap it up. All right, well, maybe we should just wrap it up there then. I'll put out the number one more time. I got time for one more call. 509-731-0567. Caller?
What up, Zach?
What's up?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right.
Good, good. This is Ezra Bitcoin again.
Okay, what's up, man?
Here to get grilled by the chat once again.
Well, you bring it on yourself. I do see what people are complaining about you with the chat. I do see you posting the comments about my girl and stuff. I mean, so you kind of bring it on yourself. I give you the benefit of the doubt, though. So
That's good. I'm just teasing, bro. Come on.
well, but that's why some people don't like you. I see what people say about you in the chat. They're like, he's always bashing on Zach's woman, and I do see it as like you're halfway joking. But I also think a part of you is serious. But it doesn't matter to me. I don't care.
I said one thing, and I just said that. I don't even know what I said.
So anyway, what's up, man? What's the call about tonight?
I think all I said was that you could probably find a truth-seeking woman.
You said more than that, dude. I've seen your comments. You're like, your woman's not even that cute. You could find a better one. So it's like, why are you even writing that?
Just because a lot of people just want to see you do your work, and they don't like hearing that she's against it.
She's not against it. But it's like, she gets to see what today. Today I got vandalism to the house. So she's like, see, Zach, everywhere you go, you're always going to have people messing with you.
Yeah, well, it must be a different thing living with it.
Sure. But I mean, she just has a realistic perspective. I mean, she's seen everything that's gone on in the time that I've been doing this.
Well, okay. So yesterday you said that you're good for, you want a bartering system, right?
Right.
So I was thinking, and there's one big benefit of Bitcoin. It is the most divisible form of currency. You could divide it in 100 million pieces. So like, say you're growing your tomatoes and stuff, and you want to trade it for my papayas.
Okay.
How are you going to trade, 2 tomatoes for 5 papayas?
Well, maybe tomatoes are a lot harder to grow. Maybe it was an abundant papaya season and the tomatoes didn't grow. I mean, you're just going to have to work it out based on what the reality of the situation is.
Exactly. There's going to be a lot of variables, but, I'm saying you could price anything in Bitcoin because I could send you 10 pennies in Bitcoin right now.
Okay.
So that's just one of the benefits, And so one of the other things you said was you don't know who's running Bitcoin, right?
I don't know who's behind establishing it.
So that was one of your main concerns that I found from the last chat.
Right.
So there's 2 reasons why that's kind of a non-issue. And the first, most important reason is the fact that it's a distributed public ledger. You could anybody could go online and look at the transactions. I took it off speaker. Anybody could go on and look at the transactions. Anybody could see who moved what where, but you can't see like the name behind the wallet. You could just see the wallet ID. Okay. And so that's one thing. So it's public. So you know where all your money. You could account for all the money. So you can't have Donald. You can't have Donald Rumsfeld on September 10th, 2001, announce that 2.1 trillion is unaccounted for. You can't have that with Bitcoin because it's a public ledger and all the transactions are available to us. Well, that's nice that it's transparent. And so number 2, there's only going to be 21 million, so you can't print more of it, and so it's got to be accounted for. There's no bailouts. There's no, there's no inflation. That's going to be a thing of the past. So what is it that substantiates the value behind Bitcoin? Like, what is it that's backing? Is it just the faith of the community? I honestly don't even know what causes the major swings and spikes in the value of Bitcoin. It's all about supply and demand. What causes the price of Halloween costumes to go up around Halloween? It's because there's more demand. Sure. And why were Bitcoins 10 cents back in 2009? It's because there wasn't a demand. It was a new thing, and people didn't know what it was, so there wasn't a lot of adoption. And now you got the reason why it's in the tens of thousands now, and reaching higher and higher, is because there's institutions coming in. There's people like the backed BAKKT. They're opening up futures trading. They got the NASDAQ opening up futures trading. So now you got big institutions pumping in money because they're afraid. They know what's coming. They know if they don't get in a stake in the piece of the pie, that they're going to be like really screwed.
Okay. Well, like I said, when I go to this Anarchadelphia thing, a big part of that conference is cryptocurrency. So I'll be listening.
For sure. God bless.
All right, man. Take care.
All right. Bye, Bitcoin.
All right. All righty. The Zenith of the Alpha asked if the Anarchadelphia conference is mostly about Bitcoin. No, but it's a big percentage of the thing, but it's not mostly about that. I would say it's equally as much about as people talking about why we need to get free, what's wrong in society, sharing ideas, helping expose the occult knowledge that's put before us every single day that most people don't recognize, such as this language of numbers that I talk about most of the time. So it's a mix of topics. Here, I'll show you I am screen sharing right now. Let me get the Anarchadelphia website up here. Anybody can access this. The schedule's up for, let me see. Where's that schedule at? Anarchadelphia, event info, speakers. I think this is the one where it shows. All right. So here's your list of speakers. And I know there's somewhere on here where it shows what's going on what day, unless they switched up the schedule and took it down. Let me try this one. I thought this was the one where it showed it. Before they had a picture up without sunglasses. I don't know why they put on that sunglass picture. Whatever. I didn't know. Makes it look like I'm hiding something, but I don't know. Maybe they took down the schedule. Maybe they're revising the schedule. I don't know. They had me scheduled to speak for 1 hour on Saturday. I personally wish I had a little bit more time than that, but I was going to speak individually 1 hour on Saturday, and then they had me as part of a panel discussion on Sunday with other people talking about occult knowledge and how it's used by the elite. So I don't know where the schedule went. It was there. Let me scroll one more time. Yeah, maybe they're revising it. But I imagine that I'll probably still be speaking Saturday afternoon. So. But that is the website. And if you do want to get tickets, you do this get tickets here thing. And if you put in, you can do it for whatever speaker you want to see. There's a code when you check out. If you wanted to get mine, you'd write out my name, Zachary K. Hubbard. Got to know how to spell my name, I guess. Zachary. And then you get a discount off the ticket. But as you can see, tickets are expensive. They're $350. And I think honestly, I know that they haven't sold as many tickets as they want to right now, and I imagine that's because the price is high. So I don't know if they can do anything to get costs down, but apparently that's what it costs to rent the venue, and then they're also paying for speakers' transportation. So that's their expenses. People's transportation there, the speakers. They're paying for our lodging, and they have us having roommates to cut down on costs, and then the venue itself. So I'm guessing that maybe I don't know what the total capacity is for the place, but I imagine it's probably not huge. Otherwise, they probably could charge less for tickets. So I need to hurry up and plan out my itinerary for what I'm going to be doing. Again, I'm going to be spending 2 weeks, Philadelphia, DC, New York, and I'm not sure where I'm going to go first after Philadelphia. Maybe New York and then DC. I have to figure out what's the smartest thing. But I plan on spending 2 weeks out there, and I look forward to meeting people and putting together like maybe a street documentary of raising awareness about this knowledge. There's a lot of cool things that can be done in DC as well as New York and probably Philadelphia as well. It's the city I know the least about among those 3 cities. But I imagine going to special spots where people, visit and tour and, just having up signs, T-shirts, and, just for example, in DC, imagine being by the Albert Pike statue where he's got his Morals and Dogma book, and imagine teaching about Kabbalah and morals and dogma and what's encoded in Washington, D.C., government, authority, Kabbalah, morals and dogma itself, how all of those things sum to 137, what the significance of that number is, how often that number is used ritualistically in Washington, D.C., from the Mueller investigation beginning on the 137th day of the year to the CIA, the latest CIA lady getting sworn in 137 days from her birthday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I just go through my blog, I'll pull up a million other examples of how that number's been used ritualistically in DC recently. But I just think it would be cool to go place to place, maybe have on a shirt, that has to do with that place I'm standing at, a sign, some other people there with me, people who are willing to gather there, and some cameras. And I just think it might be cool to get some real interactions with people on the street who don't know anything about this and to see how they respond and the good and the bad responses. Because, the bad responses, they could have a comedic element. So if you can't afford the ticket, hopefully you can still come out and meet up where I plan to be at the times I plan to be there. But 2 weeks is the idea for now. So that said, I see it's past 11:30. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I do have the radio show tomorrow night. I've just I've been on the live streams and making more videos lately because I just feel like after getting that strike on my birthday, I feel like it's only a matter of time until I'm on channel number 19. So taking advantage of the time while I still got it. Hold on, somebody said, Zach, how come the education system doesn't focus on natural talent within kids? Well, you know why? They're trying to take everybody and just mold them into this thing that the state can use. So I saw Austin's comment earlier about how I should run to be the 47th president. That'd be funny. So. All right, you guys. Good night, everybody. Good day, depending on where you are. I'll be back on Patreon in the morning for those of you who are there. And I'll also tell you what, if this channel does get deleted, I'm going to start doing everything exclusively on Patreon. And if you want to support the content, it's going to be $1 a month if they take this channel down. I'm not going to put out any more stuff publicly because I'm just sick of getting deleted. And honestly, what I really need people to do is support the work and get behind it. And if you don't got $1 a month for this content, then I don't know. I guess you just save your money to give it to your telephone provider and your internet connection provider and whatever else you do. But like I said, if all of you guys have gotten behind this cause for $1 a month, which you've all had the opportunity to do since March of last year, there'd be a team of us now. We'd be traveling, and I don't know why that hasn't happened. So what I do know is the community of people here don't value this work at a rate of $1 a month, and that's pretty sad. But for all the people who have supported, thank you very much. Very grateful. For all the people who haven't, you're the reason the mission isn't where it should be. So And again, the reason there needs to be a team of people is because you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow too. It's like, I wanted to be on here earlier doing something, but instead I was cleaning up my property, which was nicely vandalized today. So that'll be a nice expense as well. Anyway, I'll leave it there, Truth Seeker. Until next time.